Hello, and welcome to The Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. My name is Steve Van Eierstein. Thanks for joining me again for February 15th reading of James Allen's Daily Meditations. And really interested to see what this next one's about. The direction it's been taking the last 2 days has been just fantastic. It's really speaking and resonating to a part of me that I truly believe that like all these little things that we do matter. And when we accept that and understand that we have to take action on these little things, regardless of how we feel, we start to make a lot of progress, because it's usually our emotions that get in the way ahead of time anyway. So I've been loving it. So these last couple of days, I hope everyone else has been too, that's been jumping on and listening. But this will be a fresh to you, fresh to me reading, meaning that you'll get my genuine responses, reactions, observations, and what I relate to about the reading, because I haven't read it prior to reading it for this podcast today. So if you like the content here that you've been listening to and hearing, go ahead and go over to Facebook and give a follow or a like to the Facebook page for The Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk, and you'll get some quotes that I post and all updates about the newest episodes coming out and the future projects. So, so I'm looking forward to what's coming down the pipe this year. So, but here we go for today's reading, February 15th, from James Allen's Daily Meditations. He who masters the small becomes the rightful possessor of the great. The foolish man thinks that little faults, little indulgences, little sins are of no consequence. He persuades himself that so long as he does not commit flagrant immoralities, he is virtuous and even holy. But he is thereby deprived of virtue and holiness, and the world knows him accordingly. It does not reverence, adore, and love him. It passes him by. He is reckoned of no account. His influence is destroyed. The efforts of such a man to make the world virtuous, his exhortations to his fellow man to abandon great vices, are empty of substance and barren of fruitage. The insignificance which he attaches to his small vices permeates his whole character and is the measure of his manhood. He who regards his smallest delinquencies as of the gravest nature becomes a saint. That ended. Well, it actually opened and ended with some pretty heavy statements there. It opened with, he who masters the small becomes rightful possessor of the great. And then it ends with, he who regards his smallest delinquencies as of the gravest nature becomes a saint. Those are some pretty big statements, actually. But let's start at the beginning here. It's always a good place to start. He who masters the small becomes a rightful possessor of the great. And as I've grown in my sobriety, grown in my spirituality, and I've gone further in my journey in walking this spiritual walk, and just to say it, as this path is narrowed for me, I've begun to understand how important it is to master these small little things. Now, I can't tell you, again, that I do things perfectly. There's a lot of room for improvement. And sometimes I take actions to improve things, and turns out they were the wrong actions to take. But at least it was a learning experience. But, hey, that's how this goes. That's how this growth goes. And I love how he says here, it's the rightful possessor of the great. He who masters the small becomes the rightful possessor of the great. The implication there is, if you can't master the small, minor details of your life, if you can't navigate and correct the small errors and indulgences, he gives that list here in the next line, in your personal life, why should you be trusted with greatness? Is the overstepping of the unmanageability of your personal life really a good idea? I thought yes for a long time. I thought the statement of "that's just how I am" was one I used, until I realized that was just a cop-out for not doing the work. It was part of my personality. It's just what I do, or it's because of this, it's because of that. Those are all just excuses. An unhealthy, negative, harmful behavior is just that. Change it. Don't abscond your responsibilities to address your own shortcomings. Don't do it. Don't abandon them. Because if you do, who is to say you won't do that with greater responsibilities? And I understand that now. Greatness comes from the ground up. And I believe that. So he goes into the great man knows. The foolish man. I jumped up to the 14th real quick, back down to the 15th. The foolish man thinks that little faults, little indulgences, little sins are of no consequence. He persuades himself that so long as he does not commit flagrant immoralities, he is virtuous, even holy. That's exactly what I was just talking about. I thought I could I'll have this, I'll have that, this isn't that bad. I'm not hurting anyone with this, blah, 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 this, that, the other thing. It all matters. Unmanageability starts in the smallest seeds. These undisciplined aspects of our lives will eventually catch up with us in some way, shape, or form. I believe that. These little faults, we enjoy them usually, those little faults, the little indulgences, whatever that may be. Gambling, relationships, sex, drugs, drinking, food. Little sins of no consequence. That's what we believe. That's what I used to believe. I know differently today, thankfully. And I did this. I persuaded myself that so long as I do not commit flagrant immoralities, I'm virtuous. Look at me. Look how well I'm doing because I haven't killed anybody, because I haven't openly stolen, because I haven't mistreated people so severely as I used to. Right? Like how ridiculous. Just because the most extreme sins, we're going to use the word, are not being committed, doesn't make me virtuous. There's a whole lot of things below that need to be addressed too. And the smaller ones usually are the ones that really cause a lot of damage in the long run. He goes on to say, but he is thereby deprived of virtue and holiness, and the world knows him accordingly. It does not reverence, adore, and love him. It passes him by. He is reckoned of no account. His influence is destroyed. That's painful, isn't it? These good intentions. These things we think we can accomplish without actually addressing ourselves and our own inadequacies first. And think people should just be okay with the fact and listen to our message. We need... It's a hard thing for me to understand that I'm a flawed human, so I'm not going to be perfect, and that's understandable. We're striving for it, though. But if you're not actively trying to correct your mistakes and knowingly participating in these little faults, indulgences, little sins, if you're knowingly doing it, there's a problem. And what ends up happening is you don't become revered, adored, and loved. It passes you by. He's reckoned of no account. No one cares about you. Your value is gone, and then his influence is destroyed. Your words are empty. You don't have the action and the experience and the belief in the things you're saying yourself. If you can't manage these little things, why would they trust you with greater? The efforts of such a man to make the world virtuous, his exhortations to his fellow man to abandon great vices, are of empty substance, are empty of substance and barren of fruitage. There's nothing backing up what you're saying. If you don't have an experience, or if you're not willing to live by the words that are coming out of your mouth, if you can't have that integrity, if you can't be willing to address these things and correct the small little things in your life, why would anyone want to listen? Barren of fruitage. Empty of substance, barren of fruitage. No one's going to, everything's going to fall on deaf ears because your own actions undermine your intentions. The insignificance which he attaches to small vices permeates his whole character and is the measure of his manhood. That's the insignificance which he attaches to his small vices permeates his whole character. That little shove to the side, ignore this, it goes through all of you, and it's germinating, it's growing, it's this denial that you're in, or this insanity that you're really in at that point, you know? Oh, it's not a big deal. Oh, it's not a big deal. Oh, it's not a big deal. It corrupts you from the inside eventually. And other people usually see it before you do. That's the hardest thing. It permeates your whole character and is the measure of his manhood. Your integrity and your willingness to follow the spiritual principles and apply them in your life readily when brought to light is the measure of your manhood. He who regards the smallest delinquencies as the gravest nature becomes a saint. If you treat everything as it's important, like I've said, everything matters. From a little white lie to cheating on your diet to skipping the gym, not exercising, being aggressive and snappy to someone that doesn't really deserve it, not practicing love and kindness, and not being forgiving, not being of service to other people genuinely, not practicing your disciplines to live a healthy life, not being open-minded. When you regard all of these things as extremely important, the smallest to the largest, you will become a saint, it says here. And that's a pretty big promise. That's a lot of prestige to be walking with. It's a lot of responsibility to hold, but I have a feeling at that point it won't feel like responsibility. It'll feel more like just living and growing. And this is what I practice in my life on a daily basis. I try to make effort on these little things and manage my life and grow and live a better life. And when something comes to my attention, I address it as quickly as I can, actually, because I've waited before and it doesn't feel good, honestly. And that's how it goes. I won't feel I would be able to even do this podcast if I wasn't actively practicing the principles and disciplines that I speak about here. Now, I've already come across some in this podcast where I say I got to do better at this. And I do. And I have been making efforts to do better at these things. But I'll tell you this. I have the willingness to, which I'm very grateful for. So, anyway, February 15th, everybody. That was fantastic. It was a just great reading. And just talking about the importance of the small things and actually taking care of them, not ignoring the small things that need to be changed. So I hope y'all have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to February 16th tomorrow, and we'll get started again. So until next time, thanks.